Ethan and Lily sat huddled together in the middle of the dark library, their ragged breaths the only sound breaking the silence. The air reeked of burnt paper and ancient mold, while dust floated as if it were watching them. But what terrified them wasn't the silence, it was the footsteps. Slow, steady, deliberate steps echoed from the deepest shelves of the library. There was no light to reveal the source, yet the darkness itself seemed to move, yes, move, as though it were a living entity crawling between the aisles. Ethan felt something unnatural. The closer the steps came, the colder the air grew. Not an ordinary chill, but the suffocating cold of an open grave. Lily gripped his arm tightly, her eyes gleaming with terror. "Ethan, someone's here. It's here." Ethan nodded slowly, unwilling to let his voice betray the same horrifying truth. Suddenly, a low laugh slithered through the library. Not human. Part guttural man's voice, part whispering woman's voice, alternating within the same throat. "You escaped me as a child, but not forever." Ethan froze. Memories surged back. Those nights in his childhood when he awoke to see a tall shadow standing at his doorway, silent. His father dismissed it as nightmares, but now the very same shadow stood before him, speaking, laughing, advancing. From within the dark, a shape emerged, a long black coat, a hidden face, empty eyes like endless voids. "I don't want to see this. I don't want to," Lily whispered, trembling. The void turned to her slowly, its voice lowering, as if it were whispering directly into her mind. "You will witness his end." "No!" Ethan shouted, leaping to his feet. "Stay away from her!" But the moment he stepped forward, something crushed him in place. The air itself wrapped around him, pressing on his bones. Ethan fell to his knees, screaming in agony, while Lily cried his name, trying to reach him. The void lifted its hand slowly. Ethan's body rose from the ground, suspended like a helpless puppet. "I've waited so many years. You were a weak child. Now you're grown, but you will always belong to me." Ethan struggled, choking, his voice smothered by the weight of the air. His bones felt as though they would snap from within. Then Lily did something unexpected. She grabbed a broken wooden plank from a shattered shelf and swung it at the space the void occupied. The instant it touched, a strange sound rang out, as if striking an immense iron wall, and for a heartbeat, blue light flickered. Ethan dropped violently to the floor. The void roared, shaking the very walls of the library. "You dare!" It lunged toward Lily with inhuman speed, its body stretching and twisting like living smoke. Lily seized Ethan's arm, dragging him as they ran between the shelves. Laughter, whispers, and footsteps chased them from every direction. They burst into the old reading hall. Dust-covered tables, shredded books, shattered windows spilling silver moonlight. Ethan stopped, gasping for air. "We can't run forever," he said, voice trembling. "Then what do we do?" Lily cried. "We face it, or it ends everything here." Before Lily could respond, glass shattered behind them. They turned, only to see the darkness itself pouring through the windows, gathering in the center of the hall, twisting into the void's form once more. But this time it had no stable shape, half smoke, half jagged bone, its screams rattling the walls. It raised its hand. At once the moonlight vanished, and the hall drowned in pitch black. Then thousands of tiny eyes appeared in the dark, glowing white, staring from every direction. Lily gasped, clutching Ethan's arm. "They're not one, there are many." The void's voice cracked with laughter. "Each eye is a soul I claimed long ago. They are me, and I am them." Ethan screamed with all the strength he had left, "I won't let you!" In desperation, he seized an iron rod from the floor and charged at the void. The creature spread its arms wide to receive him. The instant they collided, the ground shook, walls trembled, and the darkness collapsed inward, shrinking into a single point, leaving Ethan and Lily crashing to the floor in dead silence. But before the shadow vanished completely, its voice slithered like a whisper into Ethan's ear. "The true confrontation has yet to begin." After silence fell once again, Ethan sat leaning against the wall of the dark hall, his chest rising and falling rapidly. His whole body trembled, not only from exhaustion, but from the deep fear that had taken root inside him. Lily sat beside him, tears welling in her eyes as she placed a hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, you almost died." I know, but it didn't want to kill me. Not yet." They exchanged terrified glances, as if both understood that the creature had only revealed a fraction of its true power. While trying to catch their breath, Ethan noticed that one of the broken shelves in the corner of the hall was unlike the others. The wood was scorched around the edges, yet the center remained oddly intact, as if something had shielded it from the flames. Brushing away the dust, Ethan uncovered an old leather bag sealed with rusty locks. He whispered, reaching out with trembling fingers, "What is this?" Struggling with the lock, he finally pried it open, revealing a thick, leather-bound book. Its cover was carved with strange symbols, eyes and interlocking circles that seemed to follow anyone who looked at them. Lily instantly pulled back, her face pale. "No, Ethan, don't open it. That thing, it's not natural." But Ethan replied in a tense voice, "Maybe this is what we need to understand who or what it is." Slowly he opened the book. A suffocating stench of rot seeped out, like the breath of 1,000 graves. The yellowed, fragile pages were filled with writings in archaic English mixed with fragments of Latin. Ethan began to read aloud, his voice unsteady. "Year 1846. The catastrophe reached our town. A stranger came, dressed in black. He was no man, but the embodiment of emptiness itself. He took the souls of children first, then the adults. We could not banish him, so we bound him within this book, to let his name die between its pages." Lily gasped. "That's him. It's talking about the void." Ethan continued, though the words themselves seemed to writhe across the parchment. "But blood is his key. Whoever speaks his name in darkness frees him from his prison. Since then, he waits for the one who dares to look into his eyes." A chill froze Ethan's veins. He lifted his eyes toward Lily. "They released him. Or maybe we did." Lily snapped the book shut, shouting, "Then we must destroy it! If this is the source of his power, let's burn it now!" But Ethan grabbed her wrist firmly. "No, you can't destroy something like this. If he's bound to it, burning it might unleash him completely." For a few heavy seconds, silence reigned, broken only by their ragged breathing. Then, suddenly, the pages began to flip on their own. The book opened to what looked like a blank page. Slowly, words began to appear, written in thick black ink, as though carved by an invisible hand. "Ethan, you've returned at last." Lily gasped, stumbling backwards. "It knows your name!" Ethan swallowed hard, sweat dripping down his forehead as more words etched themselves onto the page. "You are his eyes in this world." Ethan slammed the book shut and hurled it to the ground, but it didn't stop. The pages kept turning, and a whispering voice seeped out. "Ethan, you won't escape me this time." In the next instant, the last traces of moonlight vanished. The hall was swallowed in total darkness. From between the shelves, a long black hand emerged, its claw-like fingers stretching toward the book. Lily screamed, "Ethan, the book is drawing him to us!" Ethan snatched the book, despite its searing heat, as though holding a burning coal. Grabbing Lily's hand, he bolted toward the library doors. Yet with each step, the darkness thickened around them, until it felt as though they were walking into a bottomless abyss. Then, suddenly, everything went silent. Ethan blinked and found himself standing in an old cemetery. The crooked gravestones jutted from the fog-choked earth. Beside him, Lily clung to his arm, her eyes glistening with terror. What is this place? How did we get here?" Ethan's voice quivered, but Lily didn't answer. She stared wide-eyed at a single grave in the center of the cemetery. On its worn headstone, engraved in bold letters, were the words, "Here lies Ethan Blackwood, 1864. Ethan's body convulsed with dread, his heart nearly stopping. Lily's voice cracked as she screamed, "Ethan, that's your name!" Before he could respond, the grave slowly split open. From its depths, the same black entity arose, the Void. But this time, it wasn't just a shapeless shadow. It bore Ethan's own twisted features, a grotesque mirror of himself, with cracked skin and hollow eyes. It spoke in a voice that was his and not his, layered and echoing. "I and you are one." The night was heavier than lead, and the air was thick with the stench of grave soil. After the confrontation with the Void, Ethan found himself standing inside a dark room he had never seen before. The walls were made of cold stone, and the floor was damp as if it dripped with ancient blood. Lily stood beside him, her features pale as though half her life had drained away in an instant. She whispered in a trembling voice, "Ethan, this place, it isn't real. We're not in the cemetery anymore." Ethan lifted his eyes and realized she was right. The entire room was nothing but a reflection. Its glossy walls shimmered as though made of mirrors. Wherever he looked, he saw himself repeated thousands of times. Cautiously, he approached the nearest wall and stared at his image, but it wasn't accurate. His face looked thinner, his eyes sunken, and his mouth curled into a sinister grin he hadn't made in reality. Ethan staggered back, his heart pounding like war drums. "This isn't my reflection." Lily placed a hand on his shoulder, but her eyes were fixed on something behind him. Ethan slowly turned, only to see his other reflections moving on their own, each version of him smiling wider and wider while he stood frozen. One of them lifted its hand and pressed its palm against the inner surface of the mirror. The fingers tapped against the glass, echoing through the room like death drums. Then, with agonizing slowness, the fingers slipped through the surface as if the glass were liquid, and a darkened version of Ethan's hand emerged from the mirror. Lily screamed, "Ethan, don't let it touch you!" But it was too late. The hand clamped around his wrist with terrifying force, yanking him toward the wall. Ethan felt himself drowning in a sea of glass, his reflections laughing with distorted voices. With a violent pull, he tore himself free, crashing to the ground beside Lily. Blood ran down his arm where the creature's fingers had sunk into his flesh. Panting, Ethan whispered, "They're not just reflections, they're doors." At that moment, one of the massive mirrors in the center of the room began to crack. The fracture spread from top to bottom until the face of the void appeared within. But this time, it looked exactly like him, a carbon copy, except its eyes were nothing but endless black. It spoke in a deep voice, resonating like an echo inside their skulls. "Do you see? You are me, and I am you. What you see here is your truth, not your reflection." Lily shoved Ethan back, shouting, "Don't listen! That's not you! It's lying!" But Ethan felt his heart splintering. Everything he saw in the mirrors seemed to expose something he had buried deep within himself. Since childhood, he had felt that presence in the dark, the endless nightmares, the gnawing sense that he was different from everyone else. The void stretched out his hand through the fracture, shards of glass crackling around it. "Come, free yourself. Mirrors don't lie." Ethan stepped forward, his face pale, his eyes clouded with confusion. Lily clutched him desperately, screaming, "Ethan! If you don't fight now, you'll lose yourself forever!" The entire room shook violently, mirrors shattered one by one, and from each frame another Ethan crawled out. Dozens of versions, twisted, grotesque, eyeless faces, mouths torn wide to the ears, warped bodies crawling like spiders. They surrounded them from every side. Each one began chanting in unison, "You cannot escape, because you are us." Ethan raised the cursed book with trembling hands, flipping through its pages in desperation. The words shifted, rewriting themselves before his eyes. "To survive, you must shatter the mirror that reflects your heart." Ethan froze. His heart. Which mirror reflected his heart? He spun around in panic until his eyes caught a small mirror in the corner, different from the rest. In it, he didn't see a monstrous version of himself. He saw his true reflection, weary, human, still fighting. The truth struck him. He bolted toward it with everything he had, while the twisted versions clawed at him from all sides. Lily screamed and tried to help, but the dark hands pulled her back. Ethan seized a heavy stone from the ground and smashed the mirror with all his strength. Glass exploded into 100 shards, and with it came a blood-curdling scream that shook the chamber. Every reflection froze, their bodies cracking like living glass. The void howled, its face fracturing like a mask being torn apart. "No!" Then suddenly, Ethan collapsed to the floor. Everything was gone. The room, the mirrors, the twisted versions, even the void. He found himself back in his childhood bedroom. The same bed, the same walls, the same curtains. But he felt no relief, because in the small mirror beside his bed, his reflection was smiling a smile he hadn't made.